share some of my own inspirations with, Lauren, could you start with my first picture, please? And reflect upon the world in which, whoops, that wasn't it. There we are. The world in which I have lived as an evolutionary biologist for literally all of my life. And I want to share words from two of the people, neither of whom is alive today, but who really influenced my life and the lives of so many scientists. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at Sir Edmund Hillary, and here's a statue of him in the South Island of New Zealand. He's a native New Zealander. And on the right side is Charles Darwin, a well-known name. And here is a slide of his statue that's in the western part of the United Kingdom. And we're looking at Hillary as the work that he did in the Himalaya Mountains on the north side of Nepal, and then Darwin with his work on evolutionary biology and establishing evolution as a primary science. Next slide, please. So if we could look at Hillary and me, I guess, on the left is the view I had of the mountains for many years as I was doing field work looking for fossils in Nepal. And we can see the Himalayas in the distance. And on the right is Hillary looking in front of Everest, which he climbed the first person along with his Sherpa associate in 1953. And I'd like to do a little bit of telling us about what Hillary is how he is stimulated. And here are some quotations from his work. As a youngster, I was a great dreamer, reading books of adventure and walking lonely miles with my head in the clouds. People do not decide to become extraordinary. They decide to accomplish extraordinary things. With practice and focus, you can extend yourself far more than you ever believed possible. If you really want to do something, you will work hard for it. Life's a bit like mountaineering, never look down. And then finally, you climb for the hell of it. Next slide, please. And Charles Darwin in 1859 published a book called On the Origin of Species, which has affected evolutionary biology for many since then. And my work in paleontology and evolution back in my academic days was very, very much stimulated by what Darwin did as a scientist. And here are some of his inspirational comments. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one most adaptable to change. In the long history of humankind, those who learn to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed. I called this principle by which each slight variation if useful is preserved natural selection. And then a couple comments that say the man was not a completely immersed in academia. And here, an American monkey, after getting drunk on brandy, would never touch it again, and thus is wiser than most men. And finally, if I had my life to live over again, I would have made a rule to read some poetry and to listen to some music at least once every week. With that, I was inspired by these two gentlemen, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mac. Thank you. Our next speaker is Troy Szymanski, who is our club secretary, and Troy is a partner and fund manager of Outpost Fund. Troy.
All right, thank you very much, President Debbie. Welcome everybody to our Thursday meeting. I want to first start off by welcoming all the guests and potential new members that we have joining us today. Potential new members, Jagdish, Jeremy, and Noah. Really glad you guys could make some time in your schedules to join us today. Next up, we have some birthdays, not nearly as many as we did last week when we were making up for missed birthdays, but I'd like to wish a happy birthday to Bill and Darlene later this week. So please join me in sending them a card, sending them a notice, and wishing them well. Finally, for announcements today, the only announcement would be we hope to see you next Wednesday evening at our Zoom Rotary happy hour. We had a great one last night, a good number of people, and it was nice to have a conversation over a drink, if albeit only virtually in these times. So if you'd like to join us, that'll be next Wednesday at 5:30 in the evening. Keep an eye out in the Tuesday meeting blast that has links for things like this meeting. There should be a happy hour link that you can join us. Also, send me an email, Troy Szymanski, and I can help get you into that meeting if you'd like to join. That's all from me. President Debbie, back to you.
All right, thank you. It was a fun evening last night. We did have a good group. So thanks to everyone who joined, and hope to see you next week. Carter Sales is with us. He is our current president of our Denver Rotary Club Foundation. Carter is also sales broker principal of Carter Sales Commercial Real Estate. And Carter is here to give us an update on the disaster relief report.
Good afternoon. Thank you, President Debbie. As many people know, the mission of the Denver Rotary Club Foundation is to jointly participate with the Denver Rotary Club and to make a positive impact on our community through the grants that we make every year. Our grant funds are made possible through our club fundraisers, such as the Peach Sale, also cash contributions from our Club 31 members, Red Bucket proceeds, Colorado Gives Day donations, earnings from our investment account, and our major fundraiser that we look forward to bringing back this year. Our grants emphasize our commitment to the importance and value of youth and education, disaster relief efforts, and international projects. In 2020, we had two COVID-19 disaster relief initiatives. The first one was in May 2020, whereby we combined the combined financial resources of the Denver Rotary Club Foundation, the Denver Rotary Club, District 5450, and cash donations by our Club 31 members. The result of that first effort was a total of just under $25,000 that went to nonprofit organizations that are involved in helping people who are directly affected by the COVID-19 virus. I'd like to thank Sid Brooks, our Vice President of the Denver Rotary Club Foundation and President-elect. And he introduced the idea for a second COVID-19 relief effort in November. The result of this idea was that your Denver Rotary Club Foundation trustees recently approved $5,000 in a combined disaster relief funding program, whereby $2,500 was allocated directly to COVID-19 relief, and another $2,500 went to the District 5450 to help with the aftermath of the devastation that was caused by the Colorado wildfires that we experienced over the summer and fall last year. So I'm pleased to report that the recipients of these grant funds are Food Bank of the Rockies for $825, Project Cure for $825, the CU Foundation Healthcare Worker Emergency Relief Fund for $850, and the District 5450 Colorado Wildfire Disaster Relief for $2,500. One of the goals of President Debbie this year is to increase our club's participation with District 5450, and this helps to accomplish that goal through this wildfire disaster relief funding. I'd also like to add that I'm aware of one Club 31 member who on their own in December 2020 personally donated the sum of $1,000 to a variety of our COVID-19 recipients. All this was made possible by the generosity of you, our members who support the Denver Rotary Club Foundation and our mission. We do continue to make a positive impact in the lives of people, both locally and internationally. So I thank you everyone for this. Back to you, President Debbie.
Thank you, Carter. And in this year of COVID-19 and what we've been through and the interest that our club has had in supporting that, that really is awesome update. And on the heels of that, it's appropriate to have Harriet Downer give us a Denver Rotary Club Foundation Colorado Gives Day update. Harriet is on the Denver Rotary Club Foundation as a trustee, and she was also the Colorado Gives Day chair. Harriet is president and owner of Logical Connections. Harriet?
Thank you, President Debbie. And I am sharing my screen. First and foremost, leveraging the comments that Carter made. Thank you to all of the donors for Colorado Gives Day. This year was our 5th year participating in Colorado Gives Day. And here's the latest update. For 2020, we had 38 donors. Thank you, for a gross total of $7,475, plus the incentive fund of $167. And the trustees for Denver Rotary Club Foundation did commit the full amount to the grant cycle that is starting now to be awarded effective July 1st of 2021. So thank you very much, everyone. This slide will be in the meeting summary today, so you don't need to write down the numbers. Again, thank you very much to all the donations. Greatly appreciated. Back to you, Debbie.
Thank you, Harriet. Very good. As I often say, our club is one great club with 2 great foundations. We have the Denver Rotary Club Foundation, and you've heard 2 updates about that. We also support the Rotary International Foundation, and our chair of that program is Peg Johnston. We, in the first part of my presidency, we did Red Bucket Good News that supported the Denver Rotary Club Foundation. Now for this part of the year, we will ask for your good news, and I might be stealing Peg's thunder, I hope not, to support the Rotary Foundation, our international foundation. So Peg, again, is our chair of the Rotary Foundation. She's also a retired principal for business acquisition. So I turn the floor over to Peg.
Thank you, President Debbie. Yes, and I would like to say over the next 6 months, we will be looking for your donations for the Rotary Foundation, which is the international foundation. And they actually fund probably 95% of all grants, projects that are international for water, maternal health, education, disease prevention, and most recently for environmental grants. So when you give to the annual fund with the Rotary Foundation, you are working to support international projects, the majority of which our club, World Community Service, puts grants together for our club. And you can look for the link, by the way, when you raise your hand, it'll be in the chat. It'll also be in the email and the survey recap afterwards. So if you would like to share some good news from this past week, we need good news. Please raise your hand. If you go to reactions and click on reactions, you will see a way to raise your hand, but that's hard to see. Okay, Debbie has her hand raised.
Well, I want to kick us off because I've been active in the Rotary Foundation, of course, and also work very closely with Carter on the Denver Rotary Club Foundation. But I want to kick us off because I'm grateful for all of the support of this club. I've had a number of exciting things happen that we'll be sharing in the next couple of weeks as we finalize that, but just thank you for all you do. And so I will make a donation of $100 to the Rotary Foundation. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Debbie. I don't see any hands raised. And if you
Fernanda?
Yes.
click on the reactions, it helps.
Very
Yes.
quick. I want to pay tribute to our own World Community Foundation, because last meeting we had 3 global grants. And I think our club can be very proud that in many parts of the world, we are the ones who join Rotary clubs there and find sustainable projects so that we can help the needy there. So this is to you, PEG, and to the World Community Foundation, World Community Service Committee, and I'll donate $100.
Fabulous. And Ved, can you just tell us, are they water projects? Are they, what are they related to?
The projects relate to helping kids in schools teach they are at the present time suffering, water, it's COVID relief in Bikaner, India. So they are all different projects. And I think in our club, Felicia Muftik is here. She has done enormously good job. And in many parts of the world, Bill Kostet is here. He's the czar of those global grants. So it's a wonderful work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ved. Any other hands up?
I see Jean Herman. Jean, take yourself off mute really quickly.
Okay. So
Thank you.
I don't know how to raise my hand on reactions. I know how to clap, which I will do for many things. I would like to donate $100 also to the International Rotary Fund Foundation, because I have an appointment on Saturday for my first vaccine. And I can't even explain how happy I am. And I'm pleased that maybe we're figuring out and more vaccine is going to be distributed, and maybe our life will get back to more normal. So I'm thrilled. And I want to thank my daughter's organization called Stride Community Health Centers that took me, even though I wasn't a client.
Thank you, Jean. Anybody else? Yes, Sid. Okay, you're on mute. Sid. Good.
Yes, I'll match that $100 simply because it seems as though we're turning the corner with COVID-19. I hear various different people getting their vaccinations. I'll be getting mine later today. And I think it's good news that we seem to be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And because of that, we should all be thankful.
Fabulous, Sid. Is there anyone? Yes, I see Jim White. You're on mute, Jim. Jim, unmute yourself. No. Were there any other hands? Jim doesn't seem.
I see
yeah.
Lisa Gulius raised her hand.
Okay, Lisa.
Okay, I've got myself unmuted now.
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I'll match the $100 because I've got my COVID vaccine Monday, and I feel fine. It didn't cause any problems, though they say the second one is the kicker. But I think we're on the road to getting better. I think I was the first in line of the 70-year-olds because of my other medical conditions. But anyway, they called me and got me in, and I got the shot. So
Fabulous.
I'll put in $100.
Good for you. All right. And we've got Lisa was next, and then I think Felicia's got her hand up. So go ahead and unmute yourself, Felicia, so you'll be ready. Go ahead, Lisa.
All right, thank you. You know, Sid, I'm gonna follow, what you said. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and I feel it. So can I half match that? I'll put in 50. When I'm ready for my other half of my vaccine, when I'm ready for the vaccine, I'm gonna put the other 50 in. How's that?
Fabulous, fabulous. Okay. Felicia.
Yes, mine is going to be on the 19th at 2 p.m. in Grand County, and I will get my shot then. Ved mentioned some of the things that World Community Service was doing, and all over the world, people are suffering from this. And one of the projects we donated to or voted to donate to in our meeting on Tuesday was a food bank in Nepal, because the climbers there have no business right now and they're very hungry.
Oh, that's neat. Thank you.
Very exciting. I think.
So $100, $100.
Oh, fabulous. That's fabulous.
Thank you.
All right. And
Every-
Pete Wall. Pete Wall.
Okay, one more.
Pete. Okay. Unmute yourself, Pete. Unmute. Yeah, go.
I'm going to get my shot Saturday, so I'm very grateful for that. And I want to do $100 just like the other folks have done for that. That's good news. And I think as Sid Brooks said, I think we're going to turn the corner on this thing.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. And I would urge you, when you click on the link, either in the chat or in the email that comes after the meeting today, if you don't already have an account with the Rotary International website, please set up your account. It makes it so much easier to donate and see all the things that Rotary International is doing. So thank you very much. Over, Debbie.
Thank you, Peg, so much. And if anyone has questions on that, you can reach out to me or Peg and we can help you with that. All right. Jeff Mason is with us to do our program introduction. Jeff is a partner associate broker with Benchmark Commercial LLC. So Jeff.
Thank you, President Debbie. I'd like to introduce Dave Ruppel. He is the director of the Colorado Air and Spaceport. Their tagline is "The first mile is free," and you're going to learn a lot more from him than you will from me. But I do want to thank Dave for being a naval aviator, and I know that wasn't easy, and it's not easy running the Colorado Air and Spaceport when many of us don't even recognize that there are many, many people involved in space here in the United States and here in Colorado in particular and in the Denver area. But instead of listening to me, I'd like you all to listen closely to Dave. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jeff, and President Debbie and the Rotary Club there. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. I'm going to share my screen here, and there we go. All right. Well, it's a great opportunity to talk to you about Colorado Air and Spaceport, just to give you a little bit of an understanding of what we've got going on out there and how it's a benefit to Colorado as well. We'll start out with a brief video that'll just give you kind of a 60,000 foot view of what we have going on and what we see as the future for the Air and Spaceport as well.
What was a distant dream a few years ago will be a reality a few years from today.
Are you ready to go to space today? Yeah. Watch.
The champagne is flying in the locker room as the Colorado Rockies win the 2026 World Series. And that means you can expect a victory parade in downtown Denver later this week. Jeremy, back to you.
That's going to be an incredible experience. Thank you, Nick. Another celebration underway at Colorado Air and Spaceport.
And so this brand new state-of-the-art terminal now open for space tourism, microgravity research, someday soon, point-to-point travel.
With a site operator's license, Colorado Air and Spaceport is already attracting international aerospace companies like Reaction Engines from the United Kingdom and Japan's PD Aerospace. Located just 30 minutes from downtown Denver, Colorado Air and Spaceport is in the heart of the Rocky Mountain West, providing the ideal location to attract space tourists while also serving the hundreds of aerospace companies that already call Colorado home. With more than 1,000 acres of land ready for development in the state known as Aerospace Alley, Colorado Air and Spaceport is attracting attention from all corners of the globe. Whether performing high-profile operations, cutting-edge research, or critical training sessions, the companies that arrive early will help shape the future of this property. These companies will benefit from the second highest educated workforce in America, with access to exceptional engineering universities to help attract and retain top aerospace employees, all while ensuring future growth and endless opportunities operating at Colorado Air and Spaceport. This is the place where 21st century jobs will help 21st century dreams become a reality. It's all possible at Colorado Air and Spaceport, where the first mile is free.
Okay, we'll drill down a little deeper here. Colorado Air and Spaceport was the 11th of now 12 commercial spaceports in the United States. Those are FAA licensed launch sites specifically. And you can see from this map that there are a lot of other launch capabilities around the country. And in addition to the 12 licensed commercial spaceports, there are another 12 that are in various stages of the licensing process, trying to move forward there. And then in addition to that, a whole bunch of federal and government launch sites that are scattered around the country as well. But we think that Colorado Air and Spaceport is a little bit unique within these spaceports, partly because of our location and our ability to support commercial aerospace capabilities. Colorado is a unique place. It's the number 2 aerospace economy in the country. Lots of aerospace related jobs and money coming back into the communities here. In addition to that, over 500 aerospace companies and suppliers that are located here in Colorado. And the Colorado Air and Spaceport is just 30 minutes away from the center of that in downtown Denver, and from Denver International, which gives companies a great access to the rest of the world. I've got a list of some of the projects that are familiar to Colorado here, and many of these you've seen in the news. Some of them are, well, they're all either built here or controlled from here, or have a major part of their manufacturing that's done here in Colorado. So a lot of activity here. And on top of that, we've got 9 of the prime aerospace companies that have either their headquarters or major portions of their operations that are located here in Colorado. And great support from our local government, everything from the governor's office through the federal delegation to the municipalities. All of them are big supporters for the Colorado Air and Spaceport. Some of the things that we expect to be able to do at the Air and Spaceport. We always start with space tourism. I think that's something that, although it sounds crazy to most of us to spend that kind of money on a few minutes in space, from the transportation developers' points of view, it's something that's very useful for them. Not only does it give them the ability to start providing a commercial service, but it also helps them to understand how they need to move forward then in terms of handling passengers and preparing for point-to-point travel, which is a capability of carrying much larger numbers of people using suborbital space to get places around the world very, very quickly. Also microgravity experiments. Right now, if you're working in microgravity, which has become a very interesting new aspect or fairly new aspect of many parts of manufacturing, your best bet is going to be to go to the space station. But the space station's a fairly small place, so the ability to go there for most researchers is pretty limited. Outside of that, you've got parabolic flight type capabilities where you get a few seconds of microgravity on every descent for those parabolic flights. The horizontal launch type capabilities would guarantee anywhere from 7 to 10 minutes of dedicated microgravity time. And on top of that, provide the ability for the researcher to get their research back right where they started, to be able to make adjustments and then to fly that again, possibly even the same day, to further their research. So great capability that a lot of researchers are interested in. Space pilot training, something that's done all over the world, is using high performance aircraft, most of which are prior military aircraft, to train space pilots and to provide very important experience for astronauts so they understand what some of those G forces feel like and some of those control requirements are. But we're challenged at doing that in the United States because experimental aircraft cannot be used for hire here in the United States. So we're working with our congressional delegation to try to change those rules so that we can do that kind of training here at the Air and Spaceport. satellite development, research experiments, manufacturing associated with that, and the support vehicles and parts and pieces that are needed for that kind of work. All of those things could be done at the Air and Spaceport. In addition to that, education and training is something that's very important, and not so much talking about the college level education, but the developmental training and education to help students understand that this is a very interesting and exciting industry to be involved in, to encourage young people in finding out how they can be a part of aerospace, or just to use whatever their interest is in support of space development. Space hardware testing. This is everything from control testing to rocket engine testing and other parts and pieces that go into spacecraft and satellites. Reentry licensing. When we look at things like the Dream Chaser, which is being developed by Sierra Nevada here, a Colorado company, to be able to return to Colorado where their headquarters is something they're interested in, and something we'd like to be able to support in the future as well. Hypersonic technologies, data fusion centers, those are both related technologies that we can support. And then workforce development. And again, this is not necessarily talking about degree type programs like we'd see from great organizations like CU or CSU or MSU or Denver, but more looking at the people who are actually building these technologies. So electricians and electricians and welders and people like that who are actually going to learn how to do this kind of high-tech development in the future. This is just a bird's eye view of the area out around the Air and Spaceport. You can see downtown Denver off there to the west of us. You can see Denver International just to the northwest of us. And you can see that there's a lot of room around the Air and Spaceport, which is important both for development and also for the ability to protect this asset and to make sure that we don't have incompatible types of land uses that are brought in around the facility. And we'll talk more about that later in the brief. So what we have out there right now, in addition to being a general aviation airport, we're an FAA licensed commercial launch site. We have two 8,000-foot runways. We have available hangar space and more of that coming all the time. We've got a control tower that helps to manage the airspace around the facility. And in a lot of the infrastructure and room to develop for other businesses that might come in and be interested in locating on the facility. And then on top of that, we have very large business parks, both of them heavy rail served, that are interested in developing aerospace aspects to their rail or to their business parks, and also in supporting that type of development around the facility there. Give you a little bit of an overview of what kind of tenants we have out there already. We have a mixture, as you can see here. There's some of them are aerospace related companies. Many of them are just aviation companies that provide maintenance and operations or flight training, things like that. So we have an active business community out there already, and we're continuing to add to that business environment. I think one of the things that we've seen here in Colorado is that Colorado tends to attract a lot of businesses. Looking back at some of the businesses that have chosen Colorado, not necessarily the Air and Spaceport, but Colorado as the new headquarters here fairly recently. Astroscale, a Japanese company, set its U.S. Headquarters here in Denver. That was a couple of years ago. Spire Global, a satellite company that set its headquarters over near Boulder because of the aerospace activity on and around or in this region. And then most recently, a company called iSpace, another Japanese aerospace company that set its U.S. headquarters here in Colorado as well. So a lot of interest from companies, and we want to encourage that on and around our facility as well. Our license allows us to conduct suborbital space flight using reusable launch vehicles or space planes. The FAA divides that into three types of vehicles, the Concept X, Concept Y, and Concept Z. Concept X is a dual propulsion type of vehicle. So it has both jet engines and a rocket engine. It's capable of operating like an aircraft when it's close to the airport, but it also has that rocket engine that allows it to conduct its space portion of its mission. Concept Y vehicle is something called a single stage to space vehicle that is being developed by a number of different companies, including reaction engines, and eventually will be something that we expect to be able to operate at the Air and Spaceport. And then probably the one that most people are familiar with is the captive carry type of vehicle, Concept Z, which is the Virgin Galactic Unity spacecraft that has been operating now down at Spaceport America. Virgin Galactic is expecting to start their commercial operations sometime this year. So that'll be the first truly commercial capability that will be launched in the United States. There are a number of different sizes of vehicles that fit within that Concept Z captive carry type of capability, everything from the Virgin Galactic space plane to Stratolaunch, which is essentially two 747s that are married together to carry a very large rocket for launch from high altitude. The Virgin Orbit capability, which it uses a 747 to carry a medium-sized rocket up to launch at high altitude, and then a number of others that are at varying sizes in between those two. We have the Concept X vehicle as the focus of our license. This is just a representative flight trajectory, give you an idea of what that looks like. You can see the space plane taking off on the left side of the graph there. It will climb and transit out to the east of us. When it gets out just over western Kansas, it'll turn back around, head back to the west, contact the FAA for permission to engage its rocket engine. That rocket engine burns for about 2 minutes and takes the space plane up to about 150,000 feet. From that point, it's ballistic and it just coasts the rest of the way on up to about 350,000 feet, which is just across the Kármán line or the astronaut line, the edge between space and atmosphere. And that's important from a space tourism standpoint because it allows those space tourists then to be identified as astronauts. That space plane then will descend back into the atmosphere, and once it's down into the air again, it will start using those aerodynamic surfaces to slow down and descend. By the time it gets back down to where normal aircraft are operating at and below 50,000 feet, it will re-engage those jet engines and then fly back to the spaceport following normal flight rules. And this is the airspace that would occur in. The FAA identified this as a special use airspace for this purpose. Their intent was to identify an area that would have no significant impact on the other airspace users in the area, in particular, the flights coming and going from Denver International. Although this does close down some of the departure, I think 2 of the departure routes from Denver, they have, I think, 4 other departure routes that they can use in this direction. So it has very limited impact. And on top of that, this airspace would only be closed for the period of time that the space plane is operating its rocket engine. So it's a fairly short period of time once it is closed. We're engaged in a couple of really important planning activities out at the Air and Spaceport. One is something called a Spaceport Master Plan. Master planning is something that airports do on a routine basis. We look out 20 years into the future and try to identify what infrastructure needs we might have during that time frame. And pretty much anything that we do on the facility has to have gone through that planning process, has to be a part of the master plan before we can actually conduct those developments. When we're doing that for the airport, the FAA won't allow us to include any activities that are related to the spaceport. So we're now we're about a third of the way into a spaceport master plan to specifically look at the needs related to spaceport activity. And then we'll marry those two things together in the future to really have an understanding of what the entire facility needs are. we have the first 4 chapters of that master plan completed, and very exciting and interesting things that we've learned as far as what the industry is doing in the future. Excuse me, what might be done here at the Air and Spaceport. So we're looking forward to being able to release that over the next probably around the end of this year, and that will be available on our website for anybody who's interested in looking at it. In addition to that, the sub-area plan is something that Adams County is updating around the facility. And that is also very critical to us, just to make sure that we have appropriate land uses and land uses that won't damage or make it impossible for us to get our license in the future. That spaceport license has to be renewed every 5 years. So we want to make sure that we're maintaining that ability to do that. I mentioned Reaction Engines earlier. They are a UK-based parent company that has a US affiliate that's located here in the Denver area. And specifically, they have their one-of-a-kind high-temperature test facility that's located out on the Colorado Air and Spaceport. They use this facility to test their heat exchanger technology. And it's a one-of-a-kind facility. They successfully, about a year and a half ago, they successfully tested their heat exchanger, which allows them to take airflows that would be simulated at what an engine would see at Mach 5. So that's what's considered hypersonic speeds. And those temperatures would be at about 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. This heat exchanger technology allows them to take those airflows and reduce that temperature down to less than 200 degrees Fahrenheit within the space of about 1/200th of a second. So it's the most efficient heat exchanger technology in the world, and has applications beyond just the proprietary space applications that Reaction Engines is working on. They also are looking at applications in aviation and for any other types of uses that have to manage heat. So that might be power plants or race cars or data centers, any place that you are trying to manage heat. This heat exchanger capability will allow you to do that. And it was validated here at the Air and Spaceport. And that's just a look at what that high temperature test facility looks like. PD Aerospace is another company that we've got a great relationship with. This is a Japanese company. We met with them back in 2019 just to get to know who they were and to see how their technology might be applicable to the Air and Spaceport. We got a chance to go over and visit their R&D center. They came and visited us to get to know Colorado. We signed a letter of intent with them back in 2019, and then just this past fall, we signed a memorandum of understanding with them to further delineate what those timeframes are in that relationship. They're in the process of doing some flight testing on a suborbital test subscale prototype of their test vehicle. And they expect to do more of that over the coming year. And then in the future, they'll be establishing a U.S. affiliate and working on their licensing requirements here in the United States to be able to operate at the Air and Spaceport. So a very exciting company. And then outside of the space uses, New Frontier Aerospace is a company that's developing a hypersonic drone technology. Their vehicle will be capable of taking off and landing on its tail so that it doesn't have to use an airport or a spaceport to operate. It will travel then at hypersonic speeds at about 160,000 feet and then be able to land again in more confined areas at the end of its flight. And they expect to be able to use this for transporting high value critical items from places like Colorado to any place else on the globe very quickly. Although they may not operate at the Air and Spaceport, they are developing their components for their or for their aircraft at the Air and Spaceport, specifically working on right now rocket engine testing and then on top of that, control testing for hover tests using their rocket engines. So very exciting technology. And we're looking at adding more of these kinds of companies out there as well. And with that, I'll stop and open it up for questions if anybody's got any questions.
This is Debbie, President Debbie. Thank you so much. What a fascinating presentation. And there are a number of questions. I had folks send them to me by direct message. And so I've got them compiled. There are about 3 questions related to the move to Alabama. So I'll bundle all the questions together and you can answer them kind of as one topic. One is the decision to move the Space Command to Alabama reversible? Is it likely with the new administration? Another question, along with a thank you for a fascinating presentation. What, if any, impact will the proposed relocation of the U.S. Space Command from Colorado Springs to Alabama have on the CASP? And then the last question related to the location, how will the spaceport be affected by the recent decision to move to Alabama?
Well, I wish I was more of an expert on the Space Corps side or the Space Command side of things. But what I can tell you is that I'm an optimist. I think that there's a pretty good chance that it could be reversed if they really want to do that. I think from the Space Command point of view, they would prefer to be in Colorado. It's less disrupting for them, huge savings for them cost-wise and things like that to be able to remain where they are. I think from an impact perspective for us or for the state, anytime we can have a part of the DoD space structure that's located here in Colorado, we do so much with DoD right now. That will continue, but I think it would have grown even more if the Space Command was located here. So I would still expect to see a large portion of what we do in Colorado from a space perspective be associated with DoD. It'll just be somewhat less than what it could have been had the Space Command remained here. Hopefully that will change. It's not an immediate change for them. I think they have to move over the next 6 years. So who knows what will happen in the next 6 years in terms of looking at what makes sense with that. I think from the impact on Colorado Air and Spaceport, not really a direct impact. I think we certainly looked forward to being able to support the Space Command here in Colorado, but the Space Command isn't really an operational command from the point of view of it doesn't have spacecraft that it's operating. It's the command that does the command and control of the forces in the field kind of thing. So, I think we could still have a lot of activity with the with DoD, with U.S. government, in addition to some of the other commercial uses, and we expect to pursue that going forward for sure.
Great. Several more questions. One, is the spaceport hiring engineers? What other positions are they looking to fill?
I think when you look at a spaceport, it's similar in a lot of ways to an airport. So the kinds of jobs that we have actually there usually involve management of operations. They involve more business-related aspects of running that interface and providing that infrastructure and capability to other users. So we don't normally have engineers that are supporting us, but we do have companies like Reaction Engines that are hiring aerospace engineers and other engineers to support their operations, both at Colorado Air and Spaceport and at their other facilities. Especially for those foreign companies, when they come in here, part of what they have to do if they're going to be considered a U.S. company is they have to hire U.S. citizens to work in those environments, and that helps them with their the ITAR related things. Their ability to see things, classified information, to share classified information, all of those kind of things. They can't do that if they're a foreign company. So they're always looking for engineers. So I think, and it's a wide range too, and it keeps growing. So everything from aerospace engineers that you would expect to mechanical engineers and civil engineers and electrical engineers and metallurgists, and now with places like the Colorado School of Mines. They're also looking at space mining and have degrees that allow you to take those terrestrial types of geologic studies and other Earth-based studies and turn them to how do you mine an asteroid, or how do you mine things like water or other things in space, and bring that back to be able to be used either in orbit or on Earth. So I think there's a wide range within those areas of study. And then I think beyond that, you can look at pretty much any other type of degree program, whether it's law or business or media related studies, and apply those things to space. And I think the space industry needs all of those aspects to be brought in there. I think that's why we start talking about educating students in high school. You talk about STEM programs and STEAM programs, and how do you tell those stories? How do you get people not only that are technically qualified, but also people that have some of those other soft skills that they can help out with?
Good. I do have a couple more questions I'm going to try and get us through. So got some good questions here. Is there planning in place to work with flight patterns in and around DIA?
That's something that we always look at. And as I mentioned there, we have the airspace that the FAA worked with us to identify. That's certainly one aspect of it. Everything we do as an airport and now as a spaceport, we communicate with the FAA and with Denver International to make sure that we're not negatively impacting them. And I think when you look at horizontal launch, the ability to take off and land like an airplane is something that already reduces that negative impact that might happen. We're not shutting down airspace outside of that special use airspace. We're not shutting down airport airspace or anything like that. And we won't be with the types of capabilities that we're looking at in the future.
Great. What is the total investment, and how long before the facility generates a reasonable ROI?
The investment is pretty low to begin with here. I think we had a grant from the FAA for about $800,000 back in 2010, I think it was, to start looking at what was required and to conduct some of the environmental studies that were done initially. When you look at infrastructure requirements, a spaceport really uses the same kind of infrastructure that an airport does, especially for horizontal launch type capability. So we're really not having to build a lot of infrastructure right now to be able to start operations. We need some places maybe where we can do some fueling. That has to be done over concrete because of the way oxidizers mix with things like asphalt. So we might have to build some concrete pads. We probably need some concrete pads for doing some of the rocket engine testing and hover testing that's associated with it. We may need some special areas where we can store different types of propellants just because they're a different use and a different, when you start mixing things like oxidizers and propellants, you have to be careful how you store those things. But again, those are all very easy to do, may even just require that we have some tanker trucks that are put in different areas, at least to start out with. So the infrastructure requirements are pretty small to begin with for a horizontal launch type facility, especially one that's a dual use facility like ours and already has aviation uses that are compatible.
Okay, a couple more. Beyond scientific R&D and space tourism, are there near-term uses such as a fast trip to Europe or Asia for business or travel, or is the port more aimed at future access to outer space?
I think it's yes to all. I think the point-to-point travel piece is a very interesting and exciting piece that's, I think, a little closer to our most of our experience. And I think the idea of being able to get from Colorado, say, to Tokyo, for example, which is normally about 11-hour trip, you could do that with a space plane in about an hour and a half. So, big difference there in terms of the amount of time that's required for business meetings, for access to those markets, instead of a 3-day chunk between, getting ready to go, flying out there, having your meeting, and then flying back. Now you can have a meeting in Japan, for example, and be home in time for dinner. So, I think that kind of capability is something that has a value to business in general, higher speed travel. And that's something that all of these companies are looking at, is because they're transportation companies at heart. They're looking at how can we apply this new type of transportation to how we get people around the world. And so I think that is something that you'll see at the Colorado Air and Spaceport as that's developed, and as those companies move on from space tourism to other types of transportation in the future.
Okay. Have you been contacted by any of the manufacturers of Cube satellites for launching their products, their satellites?
We have talked to a few of the CubeSat companies. That's probably the fastest growing part of the commercial space industry right now, is the CubeSat world. Since we don't have a launch provider currently launching from there, we don't really have the ability to help them much. But as we've gotten into the industry, we've had a number of companies that have vertical launch capabilities saying, well, can we launch from there? Can we support CubeSats from there? And we can't do that, unfortunately, since we're horizontal launch only. But the interest is there, I guess, is the important thing. And as we have those capabilities come online over the next, I think, 5 to 10 years, we should see those capabilities available at the Air and Spaceport, and then we'll be able to support those companies moving forward.
Great. Well, thank you for your time today. What an interesting and informative presentation. In honor of you being with us today, one of the main projects for Rotary International is to eradicate polio in the world. So on behalf of you speaking with us today, we will donate for inoculating 33 children, and with the 2-for-1 match by Bill and Melinda Gates, that will be a total of 100 children inoculated.
Thank you.
Those practices that we're using for polio vaccination are also being used as we work on rolling out COVID vaccinations. And when I say we, I mean the world, and we're using some of our processes around hand washing and some of those other things that we educate on as part of that. So very exciting.
Thank you very much.
Next week, we will be meeting online. It will be a space follow-up to this, Space in Colorado, Space Force, Space Command, and space-related ventures with Colonel Tim Childress, Commander of AFROTC Detachment 90. So you'll want to join us for that. So please join me in repeating the Rotary 4-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you all for being here, and we are adjourned.